It is 6 o'clock right now, and can I just get a thumbs up that everybody can hear and see me? Okay, good, thanks. So I'm going to call this first public meeting to order and ask if there's any declarations of pecuniary interest with this item under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Okay, seeing none. The purpose of this meeting is to present and receive public input regarding a proposed zoning bylaw amendment on subject lands known as 6706 First Line in the former township of West Garafraxa. The purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to change the zoning of the subject land from A, agricultural, and EP, environmental protection, to A, agricultural exception, and EP, environmental protection. The effect of the amendment is to allow a second dwelling on the subject property. If a person or public body does not make oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Center Wellington before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of Center Wellington to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, LPAT. If a person or public body does not make oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Center Wellington before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as the party to the hearing of an appeal before the LPAT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. If you wish to be notified of the adoption of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the clerk, Township of Center Wellington, 1 McDonald Square, Elora, Ontario, N0B1S0. And I'll ask the clerk how notice was given for this.
Through you, Mayor Linton, notice was mailed to prescribed persons, agencies, and public bodies on January the 7th. A copy of the notice was also placed in the Wellington Advertiser on January 7th. I can therefore confirm that the requirement for giving notice was completed on January 7th, 2021.
And at this time, I would like to call on Mariana, our senior planner, to introduce this application. Welcome, Mariana.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. Good evening to you and members of council. So this statutory public meeting is for the rezoning of a property at 6706 First Line in the former township of West Garafraxa. It's located just north of Fergus on the west side of First Line. The property is approximately 27 hectares, 68 acres in size, and is designated prime agricultural in the county official plan. It is zoned A, agricultural, and a small area of EP, environmental protection, that is not impacted by this application. So the application is to allow a second dwelling on the property to accommodate family members to assist with working the farm and maintaining the property. The existing dwelling is a two-story dwelling, approximately 2,600 square feet, and is listed on the Municipal Heritage Register. The proposed dwelling will be approximately 2,500 square feet and 1 story in height. It is proposed to be located within the main building cluster as required by county policies for these second units in an area close to the road, which is not currently farmed. I know the applicant will also be providing further details on the application and through their presentation. So this rezoning is required to allow the second dwelling. The county and the GRCA have provided letters stating that there are no objections to the application. And after reviewing all the input received this evening and through the process, staff will be bringing forward a recommendation and corresponding bylaw to amend the zoning at a future meeting of council. So I'm available to answer any questions, and otherwise I would turn it over to you, Mayor Linton, and to the applicants.
Thanks very much, Mariana. And at this time, I'll call on Heather and Jeff Dowling to make a presentation. Welcome, Heather and Jeff.
Hi there. Hi, Mayor, Council, and Township staff. Thanks very much for having us. So this is my husband, Zach, and I. And yes, we've submitted the application to build a second dwelling on my parents' property. I do have a few pictures to show just so that you guys can have a little bit of a better view. Am I able to share the screen with you guys? Okay, so just so that it is a little bit clear to you, so this is the
Sorry, can you
current-
see the PowerPoint right now?
Yeah, okay. So this is the current aerial view of the current residence. So as you can see, there already is a second driveway that is just used as a secondary driveway. We're not looking at touching the primary driveway. In this next slide here, you can see that we're going to be, or we're proposing to build the house in and around the location of where the A is. So so this is a little bit more grayed out, but it's this area here that we're looking at building the home. And we would be sharing the existing well. And again, it's not currently farmed, it is just a grass field. And then I'm not sure if you're interested, but this is what we're looking for as a home. So nothing large, single story to fit into the place and not overwhelm anything. So that is all we had. If there's any questions, and then we also have Rob from Elevate Design who helped design the building, if there's any questions specific to the home.
Great, thanks very much. And I'll leave some questions for the end for sure. Rob, did you have anything that you wanted to add to this?
No, I think that was very well put. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. No delegations have registered for this application, for this public meeting, I mean. And I just want to ask if there's any on the call right now who want to speak to this application. Going once, going twice. Okay, and that being the case, I will turn it over to questions from council at this point. And again, just to reconfirm, this is not about making decisions today. It's about a public meeting. So we're just trying to hear what's going on here and provide some input. So turn it over to questions from council. I'll just go around the room to see if council has any questions or comments. Councillor McRae.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. I don't have any questions. It's pretty straightforward.
Councillor Dunsmore. Councillor Kittredge. Councillor McElwain.
I do have a question. Quick question. Heather, you mentioned that you're going to be sharing a well. Do you need a separate septic, or do you have to be able to share that as well?
No, we will for sure be putting a separate septic as well.
And second question, is this temporary on a lot that you're going to have two homes, or does it, I'm just not sure, does it require a severance, or is this a secondary home on the same lot with a 20-year lifespan, or how does that work exactly?
Like it will be like a secondary, like parents will still continue to live in the home that they're in. So if when they decide to sell the property, we may look at a very severance at that point in time if it's, but at this point, that's not part of the plan right now. It's to keep it all as one parcel.
And we realize we can't sever the houses separately. If it does get severed from the land, it would just be the parcel that has all the buildings on it would get severed off from the farmland, you know, for one of the neighbors to use the farmland if they wanted to purchase it for themselves. So it is a permanent residence as opposed to the temporary 20-year.
Oh, I see.
Going back to Councillor Kittredge.
Oh dear.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I guess this is for Mariana. Previously, we had an application of a similar situation where a family member wanted to build on a property in rural area, and they had to have what's called a garden suite. And there was a whole bunch of regulations about it being 20 years and stuff like that. So how is this application different than that? if you could explain that.
Yes,
Mariana?
thank you. Through you, Mayor Linton. So previously in the Planning Act, we had what was called temporary use accommodation or garden suites. And that is currently reflected in our zoning bylaw as well. And that is where we would do a temporary rezoning site specifically and require them to remove it after 20 years. They would enter into an agreement with the township and to say who's living there and when it would be removed. And the zoning would revert back to regular zoning after the 20 years. So the provincial policies now are sort of moving away from that and allowing, I mean, that is still applicable if somebody wants a temporary use, but right now the provincial policies are encouraging us to allow second and even third dwellings, one within the house, one outside of the house. The county has just passed their official plan amendments to allow these. The township will be amending our zoning bylaw to allow these as of right without requiring a minor variance or a rezoning. Some of these have been processed by minor variances if they're generally smaller and considered accessory. In this case, because the dwelling is almost the same size as the existing dwelling, it's considered a rezoning. But these are meant to be permanent. So these would be there permanently. They would not need to be removed after 20 years. And it's that the two dwellings are allowed and would not be allowed to be severed. So one dwelling, they could not form two separate parcels at any point in the future.
Thanks for that clarification, Mariana. Follow on, Councillor Kittrus.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this is fantastic. More people should live in the rural. Anyway, I just have another question for Mariana. So is this now in our planning policy? Like, have we changed our policies to be in coordination with that? And I also, the secondary, I was just wondering, in Caledon, they had a long battle of having a not related people living on the same property. Is this because they're related that they're allowed to be on the rural and sever and have a house as opposed to non-related? I'm just wondering if the new policy allows for that.
Yes. Through you, Mayor Linton. I can answer that question. So the previously with the garden suites and the temporary use zoning, the owner was required to enter into an agreement. We had the ability to enter into an agreement, and that set out who was living there. That was intended typically for family or for farm help. That has now been changed through the new regulations by the province, and there is no requirement to have it be family. It could be anybody living there. The idea is to try to increase the amount of available housing in the province. So as I said, the county has adopted that. And to answer your other question about whether we're following suit, yes, we're in the process of drafting a zoning bylaw that would allow these as of right, subject to certain regulations, which we're still working through right now. And this matter is also being reviewed by the Healthy Growth Committee for some recommendations, but it's anticipated to be brought forward to council soon.
Councillor Van Leeuwen.
No, I had no questions at this time. It makes sense to me.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to be clear, Mariana, I had a similar question to Councillor McElwain. So the end result would be two homes on one lot, which is 68 acres total, or is the farmland already separate from the farmstead or the housing area?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Linton. No, it would be two homes on one parcel, and the farm is still with the homes.
So Mariana, just so I'm clear, that the two homes on a single parcel, and the entirety of which would be the full 68 acres.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Mayor.
Okay, thanks, councillors. Anything else from council? Okay, so at this point, I will thank everyone for attending and advise that council will be considering the bylaw at a future council meeting. Thanks very much, Heather and Jeff, for being with us today. Thanks, Rob, for being with us, and thanks to the folks that were here on this application. So have a good rest of the evening, and I declare this meeting closed. So we have a second public meeting, and that is going to start at 6:30. So feel free in the next 50 minutes to do whatever you'd like to do.
Nancy, we're on a break. Did you want to try and test sharing your screen while we're on a break? Okay.
Yes, okay.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but she still keeps coming back.
Yeah.
And mess it up and start hiding things that you. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Hmm.
I know it's tough. We struggle here too. That's why I have the young guys do it for me.
So,
Like you were on the right track because you hit share screen and then it.
if it doesn't take me back to my, oh.
That was my fault, Nancy. I apologize. I saw the screen share come up and said, nope, not going to let this happen right now. So go ahead.
Okay, so if I delete that. Okay, I'm going to try again. I just don't know where to find my oh, there. Now, are you seeing that? Are you seeing that?
Yes, we can see that now. You just have to put it in slide show view.
Well, can I just take, oh, can I take it through like that?
You can. Yeah, you're on the right track, and then just hit from beginning. Yeah, I think you can do this.
Yeah, that's, I don't know how to go back. Oh, here. Okay. So now stop sharing. Hopefully that's it.
Yeah, no problem. We'll just take our time. There's no rush.
I think I'll try that one more time, if that's okay. Oh, it's right there. Ah, perfect. Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem. That's good.
So can you hear me, Nancy?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So you can still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I guess they must have switched back over to their other meeting. I'm thinking. I think it's just us two.
Yeah, I think they're just taking themselves out until the meeting begins.
Right. Yeah.
Actually,
Nope,
we're all here, guys. We're just blacked out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And we
They're
can hear
there. They're listening to us.
This is quite the thing. I never would have thought we'd be holding a public meeting this way, but here we are.
No.
It's kind of safer, Tom, isn't it?
Well, the last public meeting we had for Beatty Hollow and Fergus, nobody came. So
there you go.
There we go. We'll see. How's everybody tonight?
Very good.
Doing well. We are still live on YouTube, folks. So.
Okay.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our second public meeting of the night at 6:30, Wednesday, January 27th, and I'll call this public meeting to order. Ask if there's any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Okay, seeing none, moving on to the purpose of this meeting. The purpose of this public meeting is to present the proposed draft plan of subdivision and proposed zoning bylaw amendment and to receive public input prior to making a decision. The township file number for this application is RZ06/18. The County of Wellington's file number for this draft plan of subdivision is 23T-18002. The subject land is known as 6442 Gerrie Road and 6560 Gerrie Road in Elora. The purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to change the current zoning of the subject land from agricultural A and environmental protection EP to residential R1B, R1B exception, R1C, R1C exception, R4 and R4 exception, open space and future development FD. The effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to accommodate the development of a proposed draft plan of subdivision, County of Wellington file number 23T-18002. The proposed draft plan of subdivision consists of lots and blocks for up to 241 units, including a mix of single detached dwellings, cluster townhouses, an apartment, parks, open space, stormwater management ponds, and walkways. These plans are also the subject of a pending township-initiated official plan amendment to apply the residential and core greenlands designations to the subject land. If a person or public body does not make oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Corporation of the County of Wellington in respect of the proposed plan of subdivision before the approval authority gives or refuses to give approval to the draft plan of subdivision, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Corporation of the County of Wellington to the local planning appeal tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Corporation of the County of Wellington in respect of the proposed plan of subdivision before the approval authority gives or refuses to give approval to the draft plan of subdivision, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Township of Center Wellington to the local planning appeal tribunal, LPAT, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Center Wellington before the proposed official plan or zoning bylaw amendment is adopted, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Center Wellington before the proposed official plan or zoning bylaw amendment is adopted, the person or public body or zoning bylaw amendment is adopted, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal, LPAT, unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Corporation of the County of Wellington regarding this application for the draft plan of subdivision, you must make a written request to Planning and Development Corporation of the County of Wellington, 74 Woolwich Street, Guelph, Ontario, N1H3T9. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Township of Center Wellington in respect of the proposed official plan amendment or the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the clerk of the Township of Center Wellington, 1 McDonald Square, Elora, Ontario, N0B1S0. If the official plan amendment is adopted, it will be forwarded to the County of Wellington for approval. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Corporation of the County of Wellington in respect of the proposed official plan amendment, you must make a written request to the Director of Planning and Development Department, County of Wellington, 74 Woolwich Street, Guelph, Ontario, N1H3T9. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Township of Center Wellington in respect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the clerk of the Township of Center Wellington, 1 McDonald Square, Elora, Ontario, N0B1S0. And at this point, I'll ask the clerk to advise how notice was given.
Through you, Mayor Linton, notice was mailed to prescribed persons, agencies, and public bodies on January the 7th. A copy was also placed, or a copy of the notice was also placed in the Wellington Advertiser on January the 7th. I can hereby confirm that the requirement for giving notice was completed on January the 7th, 2021.
Thanks, Gerrie. At this point, I'll introduce our planner, Mariana Iglesias, to introduce this application. Welcome, Mariana.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. Through you to members of council. This statutory public meeting is a joint meeting to present and gather input for two applications, the draft plan of subdivision 23T 18002, for which the county is the approval authority, and a rezoning application RZ 0618 for lands located at 6542 and 6560 Gerrie Road in Elora, the former township of Nickel. The property is otherwise known as the Ainley property, named for the former owner. The property is located just west of Gerrie Road, east of Keating Drive, in the northeast part of Elora. The lands have been included in the Elora-Salem Urban Center boundary since 2010 and have been included in the growth projections since 2003 when the Municipal Comprehensive Review was completed. There is also a related township official plan amendment to redesignate the lands residential and core greenlands. The current applications were received in May of 2018 with several supporting technical studies, but further information was required at that time and was subsequently incorporated into a resubmission that was received in August of 2019. The resulting revised draft plan of subdivision that addresses some of the comments made is being presented this evening. The applicant and the developer's planner, Nancy Shoemaker from BSRD Limited, is here to present the application shortly, and with Tom Keating from James Keating Construction Limited, the landowner and developer of these lands. The county's manager of development planning, Curtis Marshall, is also in attendance. Staff have received written submissions from the public, which have been provided to council in a package and provided to the applicant as well for consideration. We've also received agency and consultants' technical comments throughout the process since submission. These will all be reviewed, any necessary changes made to the plan and incorporated into a final staff report that will be coming to council at a future date with a staff recommendation. And I will turn it over back to you, Mayor Linton, and would be available to answer any questions as well as staff from the county throughout the process this evening.
Thanks very much, Mariana, and thanks for identifying Curtis as well. This is a joint county township meeting, so thanks for letting us know who's here, Mariana. At this point, I'm going to call on the applicant, Nancy Shoemaker, the applicant's planner, to make a presentation. Welcome, Nancy.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Linton, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nancy Shoemaker, and I'm the planning consultant working with the owner on this application. I'm just going to share my screen. Now let's. There we go. So as was mentioned previously, this application has taken many years in design. We've worked with the county and township staff, as well as the Grand River Conservation Authority, the school boards, and the utilities. And in response to their comments, we have made revisions to the plan. As noted previously, the property is located on the west side of Gerrie Road, north of Thomas Drive. It includes 21.46 hectares of land. It surrounds an existing single-family detached dwelling at 6550 Gerrie Road, and it abuts single-family homes along Thomas Boulevard, Flad Court, and Keating Drive. The property currently contains a single-family dwelling, 6542, which is at the southeast corner of the property. Part of the property is farmed and part of the property contains not provincially, but locally significant wetlands and woodlands. The design itself includes 117 single-family homes, one cluster townhouse block that's shown in orange, an apartment block in pink, a park block, 2 stormwater management facilities, one at the northeast corner adjacent to Gerrie Road, and a larger facility in this part of the plan. It includes the large open space block, the extension of Walser Street out to Colburn, and 44% of the land will be either open space, park, or stormwater management. All of these lands will be conveyed to the municipality, all of the 44%. The county official plan has designated this property as part of the Elora-Salem Urban Center. It also shows it core greenlands and greenlands overlay. According to the official plan, the county's official plan, we must strive to attain at least 16 units per gross hectare in newly developing subdivisions such as the Ainley property. And in the case of this plan, we are meeting that density. The development has been sited outside of the locally significant wetland and significant woodland boundaries. It's 10 meters from the edge of the significant wetland. It's 30 meters from the provincially or locally significant wetland, and the stormwater management and secondary trails are uses that are permitted within buffers of these areas. In accordance with the policies of the county OP, the subdivision will introduce a compact mixed density community. It provides for the protection of natural heritage features found along the westerly limit of the property, and it will provide an important collector linkage between Irvine and Gerrie Road as set out in the township's official plan. With respect to zoning, the stormwater management facilities, the park, and the natural heritage feature will all be placed in the open space zone. There are 3 single-family residential zones, an R1B, an R1C, and an R2. I'm not sure if you can see out to Gerrie Road. It seems when I'm looking at this, people are overlaying it, but there are 3 specialized zones. One is the single-family lot on the southwest corner of Walser and Gerrie, 2 single-family lots on the corner of Gerrie and Street 4. And the specialized zone is an 11.5 meter setback from Gerrie Road, and that's imposed as a result of studies related to the Elora transfer station. As well, the townhouse zone, the cluster townhouse, is in a specialized zone with the same setback, the 11.5 meter setback from Gerrie Road. A number of technical studies were required as part of our submission. There's a planning justification report, preliminary servicing, grading, and stormwater management report, odor emissions summary, dispersion modeling, acoustic impact assessment report, air quality assessment, and those 3 reports were all to address the Elora transfer station. There's a traffic impact study, archaeological report, environmental impact study, assessment of environmental impacts, and enhanced phase 1 and phase 2 site assessments. So in addition to the county official plan and the township official plan, development within Ontario must be consistent with the provincial policy statement. And in that respect, this property is located within the urban boundary of Elora-Salem Urban Center. Both the provincial policy statement and the growth plan have stated that all development should take place within settlement areas, and the Elora-Salem Urban Center is considered a settlement area. The plan will result in an efficient use of land and existing infrastructure. It will facilitate residential intensification through a mixed density residential subdivisions. The plan is preserving existing wetlands and woodlands. It will provide a range of housing in terms of income level and demographics. And it includes a neighborhood park and a linkage to adjacent neighborhoods, as well as linkages to Gerrie Park and the park that's north of Gerrie Park on Keating Drive. The growth plan is the second provincial policy document that we must respect. The plan has stated that we must manage growth in a manner which ensures better use of land and infrastructure and encourage compact urban form. According to the growth plan, this land is designated as a greenfield area, and new development taking place in greenfield areas will be planned, designated, developed in a manner that supports the achievement of complete community, supports active transportation, and achieves a minimum density target. And in the case of Wellington County, that density target has been set at 40 residents and jobs per hectare. And so this subdivision does conform with those policies. There have been a number of issues that we've seen raised or concerns by residents. They include density, loss of trees, impact on wetland and woodland, as well as trails. So as stated previously, the lands were brought into the urban boundary in 2010 to accommodate future development. And that development must be consistent with the density targets set out in the growth plan and the official plan. We have tried to create a plan that is sensitive to adjacent land uses. So buffering of the existing residential was considered in the design of the plan, with deep lots adjacent to the houses on Thomas and adjacent to the south side of the house at 6550. Now, I know the owner has had discussions with the owner of 6550, and we have discussed the lots adjacent to their westerly property line or rear property line. We had put smaller lots in that area, and we will go back and look at the plan and see if we can't reduce the number of lots and increase the lot width in that along that common property line. The design of the townhouses we've looked at over several years, and we've looked at an increased rear yard setback, or in what would amount to additional buffering along 6550's north property line. At the present time, there's a substantial growth of trees on 6550 adjacent to their north property line. But in looking at the future design of the townhouses, we have a sufficient depth there to add an additional buffer in terms of trees or I mean, that's to be reviewed at the time of site plan approval, but we are aware of the concerns of that owner and certainly looking at increased buffering in that area. I want to go back to this one. With respect to trees, the red on this plan shows the existing limit of the trees. So save for the extension of Walser Street, which is a requirement through the official plan, all the trees on this property will be saved, and we have an additional 10-meter buffer. So we are aware of the residents' concerns as well. There's trees along the common property line of the houses on Thomas, and that's why we've created very deep lots there to ensure that the existing trees along that property line can be preserved and protected. There's also concern with the wetland and the woodland and preservation of the natural heritage feature. The environmental impact study has looked very carefully at this natural heritage feature. It's noted that this is an isolated feature. There's no linkage to features to the north of this property. And in fact, the wetlands were probably initially man-made in as much as this was a borough pit. The land, so a substantial amount of fill was taken out of this area, creating the depressions that have since then been classified as locally significant wetland. But the features of both the wetland and the woodland has been carefully examined by our environmental consultant, and their conclusion is that these lands will be protected through this plan of subdivision. The final piece that I'd like to speak about are the walkways. So there will be a sewer extension from the corner of Gerrie Park along the south side in the buffer area to this stormwater management facility. And it's our intention, once that is constructed, that linkage constructed, that would move into a natural trail system, linkage system. The stormwater management facilities will have a trail system around them. And that will also serve for maintenance vehicles from the municipality related to this stormwater management facility. So that then the trail system would come out and link up and go through the park. So we've got a fairly extensive north-south walkway and connection to here. So also the trail will come out to street number 4 and link up to the municipal sidewalks. Now we looked at putting a trail connection across the back of these lots out to Gerrie Road. And we've decided that's probably not safe. Many of the houses along Thomas are currently fenced. The new houses along Street 4 would be fenced, so you would be funneling people into this very long walkway without opportunity to escape. And it's also not eyes on the street, like we like to say. So we think the better connection is bringing this linkage through and then use of municipal sidewalks in this area. In conclusion, I'd like to say the development is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and it conforms to the county and township official plans for development within greenfield areas. Our functional servicing report has confirmed that services are available and adequate to accommodate the proposed development. The subdivision will not adversely impact natural heritage features. There are many recommendations for mitigation, fencing of the wetland, and additional native trees and shrub planting along the buffer areas of the woodlands and also around the stormwater management facility. The design of the plan integrates well with surrounding land uses while meeting the provincial and county mandated density requirements. And again, we appreciate people's desire for estate residential lots, but under the policy framework of the province and the county and the township, this is not possible. The plan does incorporate a neighborhood park, open space, trail and sidewalk system, and provides walkable connections to parks and the adjacent neighborhood. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Thanks very much, Nancy. At this point, I will turn it over to Tom Keating. If you have anything to add to that.
I don't think Tom's unmuted himself.
Sorry. Yeah, now I figured it out. No, thank you, Mary and Linton. No, thanks, Nancy, for making the presentation. I'm not going to, I don't really think I have anything to add at this point. I'm here as well to answer questions. The only thing that I'd like to add is, it looks like a long drawn out project when we purchased the land in 2004 and we started, it makes it seem like it's taken us long to get to this point. That was all of our own doing. We, we're a small home builder. We have no desire to become a large home builder. And when we had an opportunity to work with Grace Christian Fellowship Church in Fergus on a property on B Line in Fergus. And that opportunity came along in around 2008. And so we pursued that opportunity, and that's where we've been busy up until this point. So I don't want people to think that it took us this many years to get to this point to present this plan. We just because we had an opportunity somewhere else, that's why we went and worked there. We're a small company; we can only be in one place at one time, and so we're just now starting to think of our next project. So that's why we're here tonight. But no, thanks, Nancy, for making the presentation, and I'll be here to answer any other questions as we go through the night.
Great, thanks very much, Tom. So we have a number of delegations tonight. We have 7 delegations registered. So I just wanted to, before I turn it over to the first delegation, just remind delegates that there's 10 minutes a clock on your delegation. Our clerk will be timing them, so and she'll give me the hand signal when the 10 minutes are up, and I will cut you off at 10 minutes, just to let you know that. I also let you know you don't have to take the full 10 minutes. If you can say what you want to say without repeating yourself within that 10 minutes, then feel free to do that as well. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our first delegation of the night, and I'll turn it to Fred Gordon. Welcome, Fred.
There, I think I'm unmuted. Can everyone hear me? Okay, good stuff. Thank you. Now, Carrie O'Kane is my backup hero here. I'm going to try to share a screen. This is the first time I've ever done it on Zoom. But if it doesn't work, we have a backup plan, okay? So here we go. I do this, and I do this, and I hit share. There we go. Now, can someone who has audio tell me that they can see that presentation?
You're all good, Fred. Go ahead.
Okay, are you seeing it as my presentation or with my side notes? And I guess it doesn't really matter.
We're seeing it as a presentation. You have your slides on the side, but we don't see your slide notes.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect. So let's get going. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, everyone else from the township who's around tonight, and of course everyone who's chirping in on this meeting. We want to thank you for an opportunity to have something to say about what's coming up with the property here in Elora. So let's talk a little bit about who we are. So Paul Jarski and I, we are Center Wellington small businessmen and philanthropists. We're friends of Heritage Center Wellington. We've had a heritage designation appointed to a building we owned at 48 West Mill Street in Elora. Paul is retired from his destination boutique Periscope in the village of Elora. Fred is an interior decorator and administrator for the Fergus BIA and past administrator of the Elora BIA. Fred's family, that's me, has been in the community since about 1850. The Gordon Block in Elora and Gordon Street in Fergus are both named for relatives of mine. We provide and have provided local employment through our businesses. We've helped to raise and made cash donations in excess of $10,000 for Groves Memorial Hospital and Welling County Humane Society. And we're nice guys. We're community minded, we're spirit oriented, and we love living in Center Wellington. So where do we live? So I've attached the map, and I want to say the map that Nancy Shoemaker was showing is not the map that was sent to us in our package. The map that was sent to us is, as you see presented here, or at least it looks different. Maybe it's the marker on it or something, I don't know. But if you look here where there's a red circle, so that's us, right smack in the middle of the proposed subdivision. The house is located at 6550 Gerrie Road in Elora and is known as Bachelor Hall and has been for over 100 years. The house itself sits to the north and east on its lot, and the entire property, save for the road on the east, is enveloped by the proposed subdivision. So what would we like to do? We would like to work with the developer, the township, and the county to effect positive change on the current plan of development. And this is for the betterment of our entire community, for continued enjoyment of our property, to let the developer realize their investment and protect the heritage landscape of Gerrie Road. So why do we do that? We have some concerns. We have concerns about environment and health. We have concerns about fauna, and we have concerns about heritage. In examining environment and health, we feel that this proposal does not manage urban sprawl. It contributes to it because it's covering virgin farmland and turning it into residential. If we look at the proposed 241 units and use the Canadian average of 3 people per household, that equates to a population of 723 people. When we think about the water concerns in our community, 723 people using the Canadian average of 251 liters of water per person per day equates to 181,473 liters of water per day. Someone could see it as hypocritical of the township to be in support of Save Our Water while continuing to issue building permits that will increase take from the water table every day. And quite frankly, we feel that this fact could be used against the township in the future if a water taking society wanted to come back into our midst. We're all concerned about carbon footprints. We've looked up and done the research. 241 units. The average building produces 68 tons of greenhouse gases to be built. That means 16,388 tons of carbon will be emitted just to build the subdivision. That does not include things like sidewalks, landscaping, and never mind ongoing carbon from day-to-day running of house, people's vehicles, community services, etc. We also feel that this subdivision will serve to lure people from outside of our community to move into it. They then have to commute elsewhere for employment, putting additional vehicles on the road and demanding various township services that also contribute to greenhouse emissions. When we look at the 63 apartments and 62 townhouses, that totals 125 dense units. Future pandemics such as COVID will have the potential to run rampant. So if we just look at the number of cases in densely populated GTA versus the less number of cases in our lower density rural community. Part of the reason we're getting through this is we're less dense. You start increasing that density, you're increasing your propensity for contamination in a pandemic. The proximity of the Elora transfer station will bring people into conflict with the township and the county. Although studies have been prepared that talk about noise, odor, and toxicity, there is no mention in any of these studies about potential human interaction. And people are people. And after living across the road from the Elora transfer station for 25 years, I can tell you, you're just opening a massive can of worms that will not go away. We want to talk to you about the fauna of the area. This application actually does not address the fauna of the region who use the wooded area at the back of the subdivision lot and over to the thicket at the rear of our lot as habitat. We have a responsibility to nature, to our community, and to the province to save them from harm. And here's an example of what shows up on our property here at 6550 Gerrie Road. We have eastern screech owls. A lot of these photos are mine, by the way. We have eastern screech owls, indigo buntings, northern bobwhite quails. We have wild turkeys, including toms. I don't know if you've ever been turkey spotting, but toms are hard to find. We have turkey vultures. We have pileated woodpeckers, and believe me, I want to get rid of those. They're destroying everything. But anyways, we have them. And most importantly, or one of the things that I want to show you is so we have does that raise their fawns in the seclusion of our lot and take them for exercise on it, as well as leave them alone in safety while they forage elsewhere. And these photos are taken from my living room window. You can see a doe and her fawn. This is to the north side of our property. And if you look at the red arrow here in the photo on the right, that's the fawn actually walking right up to our house. So we have some issues there, but the next slide is the most important one. Every autumn, thousands of monarch butterflies use our property on their migration route to Mexico. And the photo on the right is an actual photo from our property, not in 2020, but in 2019. In the spring of 2020, so last spring, we had a black bear on our trees in the east side at Gerrie Road. So the front of our property is heavily treed. And that black bear that you see there, we snapped a photo of it and it was in our trees. And that was about May of last year. So we feel that special study must be made to ensure that the subdivision will not impact any of these creatures or migratory patterns. The final bit we want to talk about is heritage. And the image that you're looking at there is an actual photograph of William J. Gerrie and his wife, Isabella Brake. You're looking at the faces of the people who first cleared land in Nickel Township. That's an actual photograph of them. And if you are all interested in how I got that, I'll tell you, but at another time when we have more time. So let's talk about heritage, the house. Bachelor Hall is perhaps the finest example of period late Georgian architecture built during the reign of King William IV in Centre Wellington. Its mass design, fenestration, roof pitch, and center floor hall plan epitomize the Georgian era. It's a handsome house built of locally sourced rubble stone, comprising predominantly limestone and granite. The facade has taping, which is a trick to make the viewer think that it is built of more expensive dressed stone. In an area noted for its stone architecture, this house was most likely the first. It has sat quietly and remained almost or more than 190 years as a rare surviving example of first settlement in the community. And if you look at the image of the house on your left, that's a Georgian house from Aberdeenshire, Scotland. And if you look at a photo of our house on the right, that's Bachelor Hall, is built by the Gerrie family. The Gerries came from Aberdeenshire, Scotland, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So the history, this lot, our lot in the proposed subdivision, was home to some of the very first settlers in Nickel Township, the Gerrie family. W.J. Gerrie and his wife Isabella Brake settled on this land, arriving in 1836 from the parish of Premnay, Aberdeenshire, and raised their 11 children on it. It is believed that the lower story of our house was before 1836 on order from the Gerrie family while still in Scotland, and may very well be the first stone structure ever built north of the Grand River. The land surrounding the house, which is to say the proposed subdivision, as well as the land encompassing the Elora transfer station, was amongst the first land ever cleared north of the Grand River, and certainly in Nickel Township. It's important to note that neither Captain William Gilkison, founder of Elora, nor Adam Ferguson, founder of Fergus, ever lived in the communities that they founded. As such, Bachelor Hall and its property, as well as the lot proposed for subdivision, are the earliest examples of agricultural foundation of our community and can be directly traced back to the absolute earliest days of settlement. Our house and the property under consideration for development has been the property of eminent local families, being the Gerries, for whom Gerrie Road is named, the Moyers, for whom Moyer Street in Elora was named, and the Ainley family being that of former Nickel Township Councillor Don Ainley. These two important lots in the history of our community were corrupted by previous township councils when the lot on the east side of Gerrie Road was shamefully turned into a landfill site and now acts as a waste transfer facility. The proposed subdivision as laid out lacks transitional areas between the lot of Bachelor Hall, our lot, and proposed new construction. Construction is proposed to place the original homestead in awkward juxtaposition with its new neighbors, ruining the rural heritage landscape of Gerrie Road. Density of the subdivision is disrespectful to the memory of the Gerrie family and their promise of new life in Upper Canada. So what are we asking? We're asking for a study on the fauna of the area, of particular note the appearance of a black bear in 2020 and the impact of a proposed subdivision on the migratory pattern of monarch butterflies. Bachelor Hall, 6550 Gerrie Road, is on the Centre Wellington Heritage Register. As such, a heritage impact assessment must be executed. We would like it to be done by a professional, qualified, independent body. We also think building a subdivision on land that comprised the first cleared farm in Nickel Township needs serious heritage review as well. Because of these two items, we ask the Township of Centre Wellington and Wellington County to delay, defer, or turn down the change of zoning application RZ0618 and not entertain the draft plan of subdivision 23T-18002 until such time as the interested parties have received the above reports and have had due time to action them. We want to be actively involved as part of a group in order to create positive change on the plan of subdivision, satisfying the requirements and needs of the developer, us as a completely surrounded property, of those of Heritage Centre Wellington, and the desires of the township and the county for sustainable, healthy growth. All of this is for the betterment of our entire community and to protect the heritage landscape of Gerrie Road. Thank you for your time. I'll turn it back or entertain questions.
Thanks very much, Fred. You just got in under the gun.
I know.
So appreciate that. And we'll leave questions for the end. Moving to the second delegation, Ernie Calwam and Alicia. Welcome, Ernie and Alicia. I see, Ernie, I see your tile there. There you go. You're
we had to unmute.
Yep, sorry. We're just trying to get our camera going here.
And start the video. Here, I can do it.
Oh, okay. Can we get rid of that beach?
We can't.
Okay, sorry about the horrible beach backdrop. I don't know where that happened. Alicia De Laurentiis and Ernie Calwa were at 105 Thomas Boulevard. My thoughts on seeing the plan as Nancy laid it out is I think it looks like quite a good and well thought out plan. I understand the confines that you're into with the spaces to grow. As far as Mr. Gordon's concerns, I understand them too from his point of view, and the gorgeous property that you have there, Mr. Gordon. If you want a little bit more history on it, I can help fill you in sometime if you like. Yeah, it's a shame there isn't a wider space around that heritage building, but the plan as it's laid out looks pretty well thought out to me as far as taking into account all of those many things that I know you have to deal with. Your thoughts, Ernie?
Yeah, the plan looks good to me. Yeah. The main thing is to preserve the woodlands, the wetlands. We saw the words said open space, and we thought, oh my God, are they going to clear all the trees? But no, we want, and because we use the trails, walking the dog in the trails all the time in behind our house.
And we do have, because we back onto the woodlot, we do get quite a bit of wildlife, much like those photos that Mr. Gordon shared. We enjoy those too. And so what I would hope is that the animals would still feel comfortable enough within those lands, even after the development. But of course, I mean, Center Wellington is growing and has to grow. So the most logical place for it to grow is from the existing urban spaces. So it's unfortunate that we do lose farmland each time we grow, right? But I don't know how else that would happen unless we sort of raise the downtown to put up condos, right? So, well, no, I mean, it's inevitable. And we knew when we bought 20 years ago that at some point that farm would be developed because it was on the edge of Elora.
Yeah. So, in summary, I think for the most part, we really like the plan. We like how it looks. Good,
Okay,
good enough?
That's us. Thank you.
Thanks, Ernie. Thank you, Lisa. Moving on to Mike Saletti. Welcome, Mike.
Unmute. Can everybody hear me?
Very loud and clear.
Yes. Okay. So, like the call was, I'm very, I'm supporting this because I understand, development is going to happen. I just want to make sure that it is respectful and responsible. My biggest concern, I live on Keating behind the wood lot, and there's a natural drainage that goes behind my property, and then in between my neighbors and property, there's a culvert that's a right of way. I would like to know with that wastewater management plan, how that is being developed. I do not want to see fenced in wetlands like the one on Irving right behind Walzer. I find that, I don't understand that. I think if you're going to develop that Keating, and if the township is going to approve this, there should be a plan on what that whole region is going to look like. How the waste stormwater management area with lagoons is going to look like. I don't want it to be fenced in, and I will oppose and do what I can to prevent that from happening. I would like to, I am interested in seeing a fauna study done. I'm not sure if council is aware that woodlot that we are talking about is used by many school classes when they used to be in session prior to COVID as outdoor recreation and learning and education. And I would not like to see that be taken away in any way. So access to the woodlot is also important. My question I have for the township and the developer is, what is the plan for that? Are you going to take trees out? Are you going to improve paths throughout the woodlot? What is that plan? Thank you. No, that's part of it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike. And I captured those two questions. So at the end, we'll make sure that those two questions are addressed when we get through the delegations. Moving on to Mary Lloyd. Mary, you're a counselor for the county. Are you speaking as a county counselor or as a resident, or just please confirm that for me? Just turn your mic on.
Sorry, it turned it on, turned it off at the same time. I'm speaking on two behalfs. The first is as a resident, understanding that density is a must, but having concerns with in the plan, the location of the higher density apartment building. My question is that apartment building located there because it needs to be close to major access, or is it possible to move it to another portion of the property? That's my question as a resident. And as a counselor, this is a question actually for Curtis. What is the timeline of this property moving into the official plan as being as urban developed property? So those are my two questions.
Okay, so we'll make sure we get to those questions when we're done with the delegations. I think Curtis got the one and then I tracked the other one with the apartment building. So we'll get to those before we finish the day. Moving on to David Tinker. Welcome, David. Sorry, just try to unmute yourself, David. In the bottom left corner.
Here we go.
There you go.
Here we go. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Go ahead, David.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Yes, we've put some thoughts down, like some of the other speakers before us. There's certainly some good things in this plan. We are not here to particularly oppose the plan, but we do want to make a few suggestions. Our particular suggestion, I think, relates to the question of active transportation. Ever since we've been here, the term active transportation has been used quite a bit. And yet, as we look at the plan here, there's very little opportunity for active transportation. There is not any real linkage to new trails. It is possible for some linkage from the park area through to the existing trails through the woodlot, and I think that's very important. But I think there should be more in the way of active transportation trails, where, for one of the big questions on my mind is kids going to school. Now, that's not something that we're involved with at the moment, but on the other hand, it is something that we have seen, the lineups of cars around some of the schools, and it would sure be nice to think that this new subdivision was not going to increase the number of parent drives to get kids to a public school. And the only easy way that one can see at the moment on this plan is through the north end of the new subdivision, out Walser Street to get to Irvine, or ultimate Irvine, and then south to get down to St. Mary's, or further on south to Elora Public, or north and west to go up to Salem. So there's really only that one main route, unless there is also a trail or good walkway access from Walser Street south or southeast, and also from street number 4 to go south, and then pick up and connect with the Elora Cataract Trail so that the kids can get to Elora Public. But I do think that we're seeing a reasonable mix of different sorts of accommodation, and that is good. But we would like to see that more active transportation can be encouraged. And I think that's probably our biggest concern in this. We back onto the subdivision, and we've had the privilege for 20 years of being able to go out, especially in seasons like this with good snow, and ski around the edge of the field and then through the woodlot. And the biggest negative to us on this plan as it stands is would not be able to utilize our back gate and go along to the open space and into the wood. But that's more of a very personal sort of problem. The biggest thing, I think, is kids getting to school. There's not going to be much encouragement for kids to walk as the plan stands. So I think I'd rest on that one unless my wife has a comment to.
And I, with the lovely old
Well-
house, we noticed a number of years ago, he planted evergreens, and we appreciate that, and thank you very much.
That's to Mr. Gordon.
Anything else?
Yeah.
And also getting rid of that.
Yeah. So, but I think we've basically stated our concerns there, and it would be nice if there could be a little more effort put into having access to trails through the woodlot and not cut off some of the people who currently have it. So that's all I need to state, I think. Thank you for the time.
Thanks, David. What's your wife's name?
Anne, with an E.
Sorry, say that again. Anne, okay. Good to meet you, David and Anne. Thanks for your comments tonight. And I'll make sure that I add that to the list of questions that we'll get to before the night's over.
Thank you. Thank you. I should mute now.
Moving on to Janet Harrop, who is speaking on behalf of, as president of the Wellington Federation of Agriculture. Welcome, Janet.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Linton, members of council, and members of the public. As Mayor Linton mentioned, I'm the current president of the Wellington Federation of Agriculture, and the WFA represents 1,400 members throughout the county. We receive all planning documents from all the lower tier municipalities at our board table, and the board felt that our voice was important at this public meeting. Wellington County is the hub of agricultural innovation, research, and leadership in the province. Protecting and preserving Ontario agricultural land for the purpose of growing, harvesting, and producing food is WFA's priority. Local food production and processing is extremely vital to the economy, agribusiness, and agribusiness will always require arable land and an environment that supports the growth of Ontario's more than 200 diverse commodities. COVID has shown that consumers are looking more closely at reliable local food, and available land is vital to ensuring we have enough food processing and production facilities to keep up with demand. The WFA recognizes that the current parcel of land was identified as future development and creates a natural squaring off of the Elora urban boundary. The land in question has long been known to be a business investment and a plan. As a farmer, we are all business owners and understand the need for long-term planning, but the loss of Class 1 land is an issue that the WFA has to oppose. We need to take pause and consider future prime agricultural land rezoning in all planning priorities. We should lead by example and treat this finite resource carefully with foresight. Once farmland is converted to housing, there's no turning back and it's lost forever. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Janet. Our last delegation that we have listed here is Jeff Neely. Welcome, Jeff.
Good evening, Mayor Linton, members of council. Hey, Neil, a big thumbs up on your walk, man. Well done. I'm at 115 Thomas. Kay and I are at 115 Thomas. We back onto Grimmy Park. We use the woodlands quite a bit up until November when I lost my dog. We were regulars in there. When I got the original notice, it just showed an area and it did not, it was an overview. It did not designate the woodlands per se. And then it went on to say in the thing that it was farmland / environmental area, and now it's going to be residential with all these sub 4B, Cs, whatever. My concern is the protection of the wetlands. Is designating them as wetlands or environmental area, is that does that add extra protection to our woods so that they would not at any point ever be changed from other than being the woods? That's my primary concern. I've reviewed the plans for the area. They look good. In my submission, I mentioned something about fencing. I'd like to withdraw that portion of my submission. Yeah, everything seems to look good. The sense of community that we have in the woods is something that I'd like council to be aware of. There is a large group of dedicated dog walkers and former dog walkers who meet. We wander through, and there's a tree. It's a fir of some sort. And it gets decorated with Christmas ornaments every year. It was a spontaneous thing that happened a couple of years ago, and it's kept up. And it's quite beautiful to see the tree done up by different people in that come around. There are some of us who go through the trails every year and look for fallen trees or logs that lie across the path, and these get removed. We basically look after the place. If there's a big dump of snow with strong winds and we have drifting, I've gone through several times with shovels to clean it out so that people have a safe walkway through there. So real sense of community. I just want to make sure that the wetlands are preserved in the official plans if and when they do get approved. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much, Jeff, for that delegation. Now, I just wanted to ask, those are all the people that we had as a list of delegations. Is there anyone else on our call today that wants to speak to this application? Okay, I don't see anyone. So at this time, I will ask the applicant if they have any responses to the questions. I have been keeping track of the questions. So I'll identify the questions that I heard. One, the stormwater management design that came up. I want a little bit of understanding about what the stormwater management design was about. Can I get the applicant to speak to that?
And I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer that question. Nancy, do you feel comfortable answering that?
The main concern was, is it going to be fenced? Is what I heard, and making sure that it's done in the right kind of way. So any comments related to that?
I guess I know Nancy's mic's still muted there, and I'm hesitant to answer that because I feel I might be answering it on behalf of the municipality. Nancy, what are your thoughts on the fencing of the retention pond?
Through you, your worship, that's something that we would have to work out in detailed design with the township. I mean, from our perspective, from a safety perspective, if it's not an issue with the township, we wouldn't necessarily fence it. I mean, it's really the township that will tell us ultimately if that must be fenced.
Mariana, do you have any comments about that? And again, this is just an information session, so we're not making decisions here tonight, but you've heard the comment. Anything to add to that, Mariana?
Through you, Mayor Linton, I don't know the answer to whether it's required to be fenced or not. I know we have many ponds that are not fenced, so it would come down to whether it's a safety issue and whatever the municipal standards are would have to be applied.
Andy, our CAO, would like to speak to that as well.
Yeah, so there are guidelines set out by the GRCA that to meet, and that's with regards to slopes and side slopes and things of that nature for safety. So as long as all those criteria are met, then the ponds do not need to be fenced. However, that detailed design, as Nancy had mentioned. So we'll be working with the developer to ensure that the stormwater requirements are met within the land area and the slopes are met, so we do not need a fence.
The
And the only
next,
thing, Mayor Linton, if I could add to that, just to give credit to Derek Smith and the work that Derek did back in, quite a number of years ago with Greenlands. Derek just stopped in and had a conversation with me at our office, and one of the comments Derek had made is, I'd love to see the road look into the bush and look through the retention pond into the bush, rather than creating lots that back onto a retention pond that they get to enjoy that bush and not the community as a whole. So that, just to give credit to Derek, that was a comment that he had left with me probably 10 years ago, and I've never forgot it. So
thanks for adding that, Tom. The second question that I heard is the tree management plan. How are we going to manage the trees around this property? Does somebody want to speak to that?
Through you, Your Worship. The mitigation report that accompanied the environmental impact study suggests that prior to development, that all of the treed area be totally fenced so that it's protected in the interim. Once the stormwater management facility is in place, that fencing can come down if it's not required for safety. So the trees will be protected. And we can also put up silt fencing along the rear of the lots on Street 4 so that the trees that are on that common property line are protected.
Can I say something?
No, we're going to go through this response again. Where this is an opportunity for input, not to get into a major discussion right now. And so that's been identified as something that needs to be considered in this application. So we've captured that it has to be considered in the application. So really, I want to get responses from both our staff and the applicant at this point right now. Mariana, you have something to add?
Yes, through you, Mayor Linton. So there will be detailed landscape plans and design and tree protection as all as part of that down the road with detailed design. So that will be one aspect that will be carefully looked at as well as we move along.
Thanks, Mariana. The next question was about the placement of the apartment building. Anyone want to address that? Is that something that can be considered, or how is that decision made? Nancy?
Through you, Your Worship. Often when we are placing apartment buildings or medium density development, we want it on a collector road. So Walser is the collector road. We also like to see these buildings adjacent to parks if we can do that. Single family homes have their own backyards, but the residents in apartment dwellings, they might have a balcony or patio, but we try and place these close to a community facility like a park. So that's really the reason it's been placed at that location.
The second question was asked to Curtis from the county perspective. I think it was related to the urban boundary. Curtis?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Linton. The question was, when was the property added to the urban boundary? So this property was added to the urban boundary through an official plan amendment, number 69, that was adopted by County Council in February of 2010.
Thanks, Curtis. Next question was related to active transportation connection and access points. Any further discussion or any discussion there, Nancy, Tom?
Just on that point, really the connection that we're making brings all of the residents into a trail system through the park, through the stormwater management pond, and down to Drimmy Park. And in terms of the east-west connection, we expect residents will use the sidewalks on Walser Drive and connect through. There isn't really any other opportunity to connect because beyond that, we're in the backyards of existing single-family homes. So we really can't bring a trail system anywhere else except through Drimmy or Walser. There's a delicate balance here between trails and the natural heritage feature. We know there are trails through the woodland. They're unofficial trails that people are using. The environmental consultant suggests that these trails should not be enhanced. It's bringing people into the wetland area that that the environmental consultant prefers to be left natural and not encroached on by human beings. So I think at the end of the day, it's really because all of this land is going to the township, and we aren't eliminating any of the existing trails unless in conversation with the township and the GRCA, they want to see them eliminated. It's just that balance that we have to work with between the wetland and woodlands and the public's interest in continuing use of those trails. But nothing we're doing here would prohibit the continued use of those trails.
And yes, thanks, Marilyn. The only thing I'd like to add to that is, knowing this bush as well as I do for almost the last 50 years and having played in the bush and used this bush prior to us ever owning it, there is a trail that goes across the west side of the bush, and it goes north-south. And that trail has been there, like I say, for 50 years plus. I think what Nancy's saying is that it really comes down to stewardship. If we're going to create a trail across that's been there, and if we were to enhance it, we just don't want to encourage people then to use that trail to create trails that go east-west. And, so hopefully that, it sounds like there's a pride of ownership of that trail. I'm hearing through conversation tonight already. I think it's something that the community would have to help police, or I'm not sure if that's the right word, but that was, just echo Nancy's comment. That was from GRCA. It's a fine balance between use through the bush, but encouraging too much traffic through the bush, through those sensitive areas. So, and then just to maybe highlight the one point that David Tinker had answered his question at the time. I guess the only comment about the trails is that I would make as a developer who's lived in the community and intend to live in the community. It's probably easier for us to have the discussion of trails if we could consider more than just 50 acres at a time. We need to kind of look at a broader map of the township and draw lines on paper and say, and knowing that we own the 100 acres to the north of this site, but to look at those, where is the opportunity to create these trails, and let's put lines on paper so that we're not here tonight discussing how we can make trails happen through this 50 acres, but how do we encourage trails then through the next 100 acres or the next 200, and let's put lines on paper so that everybody knows that's the intention and we can work towards that. So.
Thanks, Nancy. Thanks, Tom. Last question that I heard is, does designating land as wetlands provide extra protection for these lands? And maybe Mariana can speak to that.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. Through you, so in the environmental study, the provincial policy statement requires protection. So as soon as it is considered significant, which these are, it has requirements. So the GRCA has to regulate them, and they have the regulations that they have to abide by. So yes, they are protected. There is no additional step or an additional mechanism where, kind of like heritage designation, where you would put another level on it from a municipal council saying that it's now designated. In and of itself, they're deemed significant, and then all of the policy implications extend from there, and they have to be protected.
Great, thanks very much, Mariana. Those are the questions that I captured throughout the discussion. Is there anything else, any other questions or any other comments that either the applicant or staff wanted to respond to at this time? Okay, then we'll go on to the next part of the agenda, and that's questions from council. And so I'll start with, we'll go around the room. Councillor Foster, any comments or questions?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Janet Harrop, if she's still on the call. Janet, I heard you speak about.
Sorry, no, Councillor Foster. The questions are for either staff or for the applicant at this point.
Not for the delegations?
No.
Okay. Okay, I have a question then for Mariana. Mariana, what is the quality of this land in terms of the Canada Lands Inventory? Is it class? Do you happen to know what classification this land is from that perspective, the quality of the farmland?
Through you, Mayor Linton. No, I don't know that information offhand here.
Anything else, Councillor Foster?
Nothing at this point. Thank you.
Councillor Van Leeuwen?
Thanks, Mayor. No questions. I'm always surprised and thankful for public meetings and really good questions asked at this meeting. So, but no direct questions. Thanks.
Councillor McElwain?
Thanks, Mayor. I have a couple of questions. First of all, Tom, I think it's a great plan. I think you've done a great job of laying it out, but there are a couple of issues, as there are in every development, that I did want to ask questions about. The first one Fred brought up, and that is, I guess, a question for Mariana. Does this need a heritage impact assessment, given that the building there is designated as heritage?
Mariana?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Linton. So if it was designated, then yes, definitely we would have required a heritage impact assessment. The property itself is listed, so it's protected from demolition. So if the applicants, the owners were to come forward and say they wanted to demolish, then we would undertake the necessary research. Given that the property itself is quite large and has a significant buffer around the dwelling, and the dwelling itself is what is basically protected, or what the property is listed for. You know, it wasn't required through the studies that were required as part of the applications. It's not to say that the property doesn't warrant designation, and probably likely I would say has heritage value, and that is something that we could evaluate as a heritage committee, and we could bring a recommendation forward and work with the owners to work towards designation and protection of the property. But in terms of heritage impacts, that wasn't a study that was required during the review, just because the property wasn't designated. But it's not to say that we can't further study the heritage value of the property just to understand it better and to see if there's perhaps something that could be done. We have, in fact, been discussing buffering around the property, as Nancy had mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, and trying to have larger, more appropriate setbacks. We can get into some discussions with the developers about just architectural style to see if there's something we can do to be a little more compatible with that style of architecture. Those would be my comments right now.
Thanks, Councillor McElwain. Follow on.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Mariana. I'm kind of feel comfortable because Nancy and Fred have already both mentioned the fact that they're going to work together to come up with a buffering solution. And so hopefully everybody will be happy at the end of the whole thing, because having townhouses right beside that home is a little out of place, and it needs to be protected somehow for sure. My other question actually, I guess, is to Tom or Nancy. I'm not sure which wants to answer it. I'm going to sound like a broken record here because I ask the same question at every new development comes forward. Is there any plan to put any kind of commercial facility in the development? And I'm thinking, because you have an apartment building there, is there any chance of putting some commercial facility in the first floor of the apartment building or something of that nature? If there's one thing that is positive potentially from this whole COVID pandemic, it's the fact that employers and employees have learned that working from home is not a bad thing. But if there's no place to go out for a walk and grab a coffee, all of a sudden people don't enjoy it as much. And I know that just because of what's happened here in Inverhaw with Blondie's closing it. It made a big difference working from home and not being able to go out for lunch or a coffee. And so having something like that within any new development should be a requirement. It isn't, but I'm wondering, have you thought about it?
Who is the best person to ask this? Mariana, maybe? Like, what's the requirement when it comes to commercial?
Overall, in terms of growth strategy, we're always looking at people and jobs being added, but in residential developments such as this, what we hear often is that it's quite difficult to have commercial space in sort of lower density areas or areas that are not, the support isn't always there for the commercial. So, you know, it's a struggle. It's not something that we require or have required. And there was no commercial discussed for this, this part of the township or this subdivision. Not to say we wouldn't consider it if it was proposed, but it's not something that we have required because it's generally not been considered feasible for most residential developments in greenfield areas. If they're on major roads, it can be considered and encouraged, but in areas like this, which are sort of on the fringe of the urban centers, it's not as feasible, I would say.
Any other comments in response to that from the applicant? Follow on, Councillor McWayne.
Sure, I was just going to mention that this development on itself is only 250 new residences, which is, you know, potentially 500 new adults. But it's in the middle of a whole bunch of other developments. So, I mean, I think it's something that should be considered. And as I've said many times, I think it should be considered for all new developments. We should be building communities, not just a bedroom, another bedroom community within Center Wellington.
Councillor Kittredge.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'd like to thank everybody for coming to the meeting, and especially the delegations. I think this plan is quite well thought out, but as Councillor McElwain said, there's always little tweaks that need to be addressed. And the environmental sensitive area, I'm actually quite concerned that through saying that the environmental study says that people they don't want people to going into that environmental area. I know that when I first got elected, there was an incident in an environmental area up in Ward 5 where kids had made a little structure and they were playing in this area, in the forested area, and it was torn down because, you know, it's not for people. And I just feel that the feedback that has been given from the neighbors and surrounding is that they they don't just want to look at it, they actually walk through it and take care of it. And I would like that to be a feature of this future development that's allowed for. I'm actually pretty amazed at the picture of the bear, and I'm wondering whether there will be a stay on the farm area. So I don't know whether Tom or Mariana or Nancy can address that question. And then the active transportation. I'd like to thank Tom for saying that he owned the other 100 acres north of this. Like, in terms of long-term plan, you know that you may, when the official plan gets done, like, obviously active transportation can be done when you know that you're having the area around it, and then there could be some sort of development of the area, including that portion. And even though you may never develop it in 20 years, you know, like 10 years before we have developed our own area, as long as you know that that's a possibility, then you can incorporate that in this plan and try to work with it. And I'm wondering if that's a possibility for this in terms of using more bikes, not just walking trails. So that's for Mariana. For Nancy, I guess that's the question.
So any responses to those questions, Nancy?
Through you, Mayor Linton, the trail system that I showed coming through Gerrie Park and north through the subdivision to Walser Street, we expect would be a fairly formalized trail, so it would allow for bikes and walking. The unofficial trails along the west side of the wetland, they will have to remain as walking trails. We don't want to put hard surface in that area. We can look at how that trail system, as it heads north, can connect to lands further north, and maybe look at that part of the plan across. So we've brought it up along the edge of the stormwater management pond, along the edge of the park block, and could it extend north into a future area? We can look at that for sure. I don't know if the township puts bike lanes on local streets or not. I know most municipalities just use local streets for bikes without actually establishing lanes. There may be a bike lane put on Walser as a collector road.
Thanks, Nancy. Councillor Dunsmore?
Yeah, so that discussion's got me a little worried. I first off, Tom, Nancy, and actually to the residents, because I noticed we got a lot of paperwork today around this development, and then some of it changed later in the day because people realized that they were using older plans. And I can tell by going to the new plans how much you had listened to the concerns of the residents. I want to thank the residents for putting those concerns in, but Tom and Nancy, I want to thank you guys for listening to that. Anytime I see a subdivision come before the council that's got 44% of the land in the subdivision is dedicated to open spaces, that really, Tom, any way you can convince the rest of the developers in town to go the same way, that would be great. So that's good work on behalf of the residents as well as you guys. The green space and the wetlands is what the latest conversation just caused me a little bit of concern, because as somebody who's walked through a lot of those wetlands on my trip across the province, there were areas where bikes kind of got in the way of the wetlands, and they had opened them up, and there was some damage done simply because they became a recreation trail as opposed to a footpath. And so I want somebody to pay attention to that. These are wetlands, and if we're going to be protecting them, let's protect them. It's okay to bring active transportation around them, but let's make sure that we have something, be it signage or something that protects the wetlands and the pathways that are natural through there, so they don't get dug up by bikes. And I have nothing against bikes. Let me be clear about that. I just think we need to put them on bike lanes and more solid paths and not through wetlands. So I need to express my concerns about that. So I just want to make sure that that gets covered. The way you guys have dealt with everybody is great. I have one question for Mariana, if I could, Your Worship. Mariana, we did a cultural and heritage landscape study. And did the farm property or anything in this subdivision appear in that study at all?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Linton. So no, it did not. So I'll explain it a little bit in that what we were looking at was not individual properties. And I think that's what, Mr. Gordon's property would have fallen under an individual property, relatively smaller in size. We were looking at landscapes. We were looking at multiple properties. And as the consultants kept telling people, it's it's greater than the sum of its parts. So it's not individual properties we were specifically looking at. Again, that property, Mr. Gordon's property is likely is worthy of designation, does have heritage value, but as a significant cultural heritage landscape in the broader sense, it wasn't identified as such.
Follow on, Councillor Dunsmore.
Yeah, no, because I know that in Mr. Gordon's presentation, he talked about adjacent lands and the lands across the road and stuff having historic heritage value. And so I just didn't know if anybody brought that up in the landscape. So his property wasn't, but none of the surrounding properties were either in that heritage landscape study.
For you, it was, so when we did the public consultation sessions that we were at and we were mapping them, they were brought up in some respects by the public. So there were various properties that were identified. And then what the consultants did is they reviewed them against all the criteria. So the community value, the three main values, and came up with a short list. So this area was not identified as that in the study itself. No, it didn't come out in terms of the short list.
Thanks, Mariana.
But actually, can I just add one thing though? Given the comments raised tonight, and we are in the commenting period for that cultural heritage landscape study, I will be providing those comments to the consultant, and we will be reviewing the information that Mr. Gordon has provided. So it will be part of that study review and additional comments that are provided under that study.
Thank you, Mariana. Councillor McCrae.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. Through you. First of all, I'd just like to comment on comparing the original design to the current proposed. It's great to see when the developer, staff, and the public work together to develop a design that's a lot more acceptable. So I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for that. Secondly, I'd like to also point out the other thing that I really appreciate is that approximately 50% of the housing units will be providing significant affordable housing opportunities within the subdivision. Our community right now is suffering from a shortage of attainable housing. We're sort of sitting at 1% where we should be more at 3%. So it's great to see a local developer addressing our local needs in terms of having a broader range of housing for different levels of income. I have a number of questions related to the different reports. So if I may, I'll just start asking questions related to each report. So the first one is the odor emission summary and dispersion modeling report. The initial study focused on odors from solid waste and recyclable materials, which was what was happening at the time. However, last fall, the county started collecting yard waste and we could drop it off at the transfer station. Is there any concerns about possible odors from yard waste gathering at the waste transfer station?
Do you want to address?
I'll let Nancy address that if.
Okay. Nancy?
There we go.
Through you, Your Worship, I really don't have the answer for that. That whole all of the studies that we did relative to the transfer station was submitted to the county for their review. So my expectation would be if the county sees a change and such as you've reported and think there is a concern, they'll get back to us with that concern. I wouldn't think yard waste would be any more odorous than compost. And we did look at the organics on that site.
Okay, I don't recall mentioning organics apart from what was in sort of the garbage bags. Organics is something that we started collecting, but my understanding is it's just yard waste that's being collected at the landfill site. So you're looking at grass deteriorating, leaves, that sort of thing. I mean, I suspect it's probably not an issue, but I'm just flagging this that it wasn't addressed and it's something that's changed at the transfer.
Sorry, I just would like to comment on that for a second, Councillor McCray, from my knowledge of solid waste at the county side of things. It is just collected there and it's moved to another facility very quickly. So it isn't stored at the transfer site. So that is probably why you don't see too much about this, because it's just at key intervals during the year and it goes directly to the all-treat site in Arthur. And so it isn't stored on site.
No, I realize that. It's just it may sit there for a couple of days along with some of the recyclables until they're shipped out on the following Monday. My other question was related to the transportation impact study. Why were traffic counts at Gerrie Road and Side Road 15 and Irvine Street and Side Road 15 not considered? As these could be preferred routes for commuters working in Kitchener-Waterloo or Arthur who want to take a northern way out of the subdivision.
Through you, Your Worship, the terms of reference for the traffic impact study were set through the county. So we haven't heard back from either the township or the county that those studies required additional work. And again, we leave it up to the county to set the terms and to review and come back to us if they feel there's additional study or traffic counts required.
Thank you. Another question I had is, I noticed that they referred to in the study as peak hours, sort of for the morning and for the evening. And when I looked into the report, the peak hours appear to be from 3 o'clock to 4:45. Yet I worked in an office and we wouldn't finish until 5 o'clock. A lot of the people who live in our community commute to Guelph or Kitchener-Waterloo. So you wouldn't see these people typically returning until, say, 5:30, 5:45. So I'm wondering why these time periods were not considered as part of the study.
Again, through you, Your Worship, my comments would be thank you for sharing these concerns. And I know that Curtis is here and that will be brought through as a question. I mean, the traffic consultants have certain criteria that they meet. I'm not a traffic expert. I can't tell you why these things were chosen, but I do know that both the county and the township are looking at these reports, and if there are additional requirements, they will set it out to us and we will pass it on to the transportation engineer who will then update their studies.
Thank you. These are just things that popped out at me while I was reading the reports. Concerning the environmental impact study addendum of 2019, will Keating actually intend to follow the mitigation recommended on pages 2 and 7, as well as the restoration guidelines presented on pages 8 through 13 of the addendum?
Through you, Your Worship, I expect that those will actually be written into a subdivision agreement. That's often what happens is the recommendations put through the environmental impact study actually get worked out through what we call an environmental implementation report, which is then written into subdivision agreements prior to any work happening on the property. So yes, the expectation is that we will address the mitigation requirements as part of detailed design.
Thank you. Let's see, I guess the other one is related to the preliminary servicing and stormwater management report of July 3rd, 2019. On page 13, there's reference made to a privately owned and operated on-site quality and quantity control stormwater management facility. Can you provide some more detail as to what this entails, and will the township have authority to inspect and assure it is being managed effectively?
Through you, Your Worship, I see that Glenn Anderson is on this Zoom meeting. He's our engineer, and perhaps he could address that question. Are you there, Glenn?
Yes,
Glenn,
I'm
go
here.
ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor. So the stormwater management facilities are part of the development construction, and when they're finished, they become part of the township property. So there is no private ownership of stormwater facilities. They'll all end up becoming part of the township property. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or not.
Well, it was odd that reading through the report and the initial report, they both referred to this one section, which is near the multifamily block, that talked about a privately owned and operated on-site quality and quantity control stormwater management facility, which seems separate from all the other stormwater management ponds. So I was just wondering, what is this particular thing?
Right, sorry. So probably if it's referring to the area where the townhouse development is, then as Nancy previously mentioned, excuse me, that goes through site plan approval. So that, if that's a condominium or whatever, the stormwater management in the townhouse block would be part of the townhouse condominium and not a municipal structure.
Okay, so it's a condominium.
That's my understanding at the moment. Maybe Tom or Nancy could say if it's going to be a condominium towns, but I don't think they're on municipal roads, so it would have to be something like a condominium.
And if it's a condominium, does the township have the right to inspect to ensure that it's being managed effectively?
There would, I would imagine probably through the sewer use bylaw or something like that, there'd be an outlet structure that the township would have access to at the property line, so they could access it there. I'm not sure in the township or in the cities that have seen the cities go in and monitor what's going on with private stormwater facilities.
I mean, one of the challenges with this site was some of the challenges with water drainage. So that's why I was just raising the question, will there be some way of ensuring that this thing is managed effectively?
I think the comment has been captured, so we'll make sure that staff take a look at that.
And the only other question I had is relating to the planning justification report. Does the report have to be updated to reflect the fact that it's referencing the older growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe in the provincial policy statement?
Through you, Your Worship, that's really up to the planning department. I know in some municipalities, what they've asked us to do is go back through the current 2020 provincial policy statement and the 2020 growth plan to show that we are complying with those policies. So we could do a quick policy update. No other policies have changed. In preparing the PowerPoint for you, we did look at it in terms of the 2020 policies.
Yeah, because just the other thing too is the fact that it is referring to the earlier subdivision design as opposed to the current. So,
yeah.
So that's it in terms of my questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, members of council. And again, this is an input session, and all this information has been tracked, and the questions and the concerns have been raised and have been tracked. So thanks very much, and I thank everybody for attending. Thanks very much for the delegations for taking time out of your night to be here with us and provide those presentations. Really appreciate it. I know it's a little bit more difficult to do this over Zoom than in person, so really appreciate you working with our technology and being here today. So it was good to see your faces, and it's good to see people who care so much about their community. So thanks very much. Council will be considering a bylaw at a future council meeting, and the notice will go out, and this will be done in an open session. So at this point, at 8:14 p.m., I declare the meeting closed. Have a great rest of the evening, everyone.